Be green.
I think the word green is sort of this word that's been used for sustainability and for a lot of different areas, but it's I think a confusing word because it does not necessarily cover what it's all about, for one, and two, I think it's somewhat of a cop-out. You can say things are green, and they're not really green. I mean, they're you can use it for marketing, and so it's become this word that has sort of lost its meaning. I think sustainability, I think renewable, I think there's a whole bunch of other words that work a lot better than green. The story I give is there was a gentleman who was working for a lumber yard, and he said, "I've been made the green guy. I'm the guy that has to be green. And can you tell me," he was asking me, "can you tell me what green means?" And I said, I don't know what it means. I don't think there's any real definition as to what one person says is green and another person doesn't. So what I use personally, as opposed to green, as I say, is something going to use more energy than it took to make. Is it going to be wasteful? Is it going to, are you getting wood from South America that takes 10,000 gallons of oil to get it to you? It's a word like organic that, probably a word like that just doesn't, that gets abused in a sense.
So, the way people think of green is one way, and the way other people think of sustainable, renewable, like you said, is another way. What would you say is wrong with how people are living their lives generally? The people who think they're green or want to follow the green way, what's wrong with the way they're living?
Well, I think that people very often, one, they're not living their lives in the context of what's really happening in the world. So either they're not paying attention, or some people just don't care, but some people just aren't paying attention to what's happening in the world, and maybe have a million other things on their mind, like the kids crying, or they have to pay the mortgage next month, or whatever. They live within this context of a world that we've set up, that was set up by the Standard Oil Company and by the tire companies and by the automobile companies 100 years ago. And so that's the world they're living in. And I don't think they're living the world wrong. I just think it's we have to break out of this mold, is what it is. And it's a difficult thing to do. Change is a difficult thing to do. When I started Parei, I got to tell you, it was terrifying. I mean, I was thinking we were going to go live back in caves, in a sense. And the reason I started Parei, one of the reasons, was I didn't want to do that. I want to live a good life and have good food and have a nice roof over my head. And so, I don't want to go back to live in the 18th century. So that's why we needed to look at how we were making energy and how we were getting energy. But I don't think people are living wrong. I just don't think they're informed. I don't think they know, and they don't have a lot of options. I mean, we talked earlier about, let's all go take the bus from campus over to Shop and Save, the bus that comes by every 10 minutes. Well, there isn't a bus. That doesn't exist. So we just don't have the options, so we live within our means. We live in the world that we live in.
So many people are kind of being fooled to believe that going green is the thing to do, and I know we talked about the sustainability green thing, but the path they're following still, like they're being told one way to do it, they're going that way, but still, how is it so much more than just recycling your plastic water bottle, for example? Like, I mean, Poland Springs says they're 30% recyclable, then you throw it in the recycle bin afterwards, that's green, right?
Right. I think I see it in the terms of progress. I see it in the terms of turning the corner. And so I think people out in the world are interested in being green, and interested in, if we want to use that word, and interested in being sustainable. Again, they live within this context of they have to own a car, they have to get from A to B, they have to use energy to heat their homes. These are the things they have to do. So if someone moves in a direction of using less plastic or recycling more or doing whatever, it's all a good thing. The problem is, in my opinion, in this world, is it's not enough. In other words, I think we're going to run out of oil. I think we're going to run out of the ability to make the plastic. I think we're going to run out of good solid food because it's all based on oil. If we don't do a lot more to get going in the right direction. And what comes to mind is a little too little, a little too late. Great, super. I'm going to not eat those calories to lose that weight. Well, you're now 400 pounds, and so we've got to do more and do it faster. My concern, and we'll get into this, but with peak oil and the running out of oil, is I'm not concerned really about 25 years from now. I'm concerned about when all of a sudden what we're used to isn't there, and that's going to be a scary time. So it's basically, and at that point, using a thinner plastic or using less plastic and recycling isn't going to make that much of a difference. So anything moving in the right direction psychologically, and doing your part, great, but you can't stop. It's got to be everything. It's got to be all or nothing, and so a difficult thing in this society. Very difficult thing to say this is the direction I'm going to go, and I'm going to stick to my guns, and that's the way it's going to be. But the more you can do. I'm one of the worst offenders. I travel a lot for my business. I have to drink a bottle, a Poland Springs bottle in an airport. I've got to do these things because I need the water, and there's not a water fountain, and there's no bar to go get a glass of water from. So we do these things. Again, it's the options that we're given. But anytime you can, it's really important to do everything you can.
So what do you think, you mentioned people not being informed enough. What's the best way for people to get informed? How can people who are more informed spread the word and inform the less informed?
Well, there's more and more good information every day out there. But what we've found with Parei is that talking to each other about options and being honest about them is the best way. And just neighbor talking to neighbor about what exists. What we found with Parei is that people for many, many years have wanted to do this. And the only reason they didn't do it is they didn't talk to their neighbor about it. They didn't discuss it. It's not that they didn't want to, they just didn't know if the neighbor was going to be interested or if anybody was going to be listening. Once they found out someone was listening, they got the information they needed. And the conversation started and stayed going and is ongoing now. So talking to each other. There's a lot of good information out there on the internet and other places. The challenge with it is, I always ask, what am I being sold, and is it, again, what's the litmus test as to whether it is sustainable or not? And it's just difficult to tell. There's some solar companies out there that are, in China have practices of polluting and other things that are worse than if they had just never made the solar panel in the first place. So, how do you know? It's very, very difficult to know that. But I think if we all talk about it, and one of the things that I do is when I go into a store, I sometimes just for fun, but I say, where was this made, and how was it made? And when the person, at Best Buy or at a clothing store or whatever doesn't know, I pretty much say, find out. I'll wait. I'm here. I'm going to buy it from you if you can tell me this. And I think everyone needs to sort of go in and start asking as as the consumer, go in and ask, what is it that, where was this made, how was it done, and wait for the answer and make sure you get the answer. And you're probably still going to buy it anyway, but at least that person now is going to start becoming more informed about being able to give the answer.
So would you say that, because I would definitely not call myself a sustainable person, but I'd probably call myself an aware person.
Yep.
Would you say that awareness is a good step in the right direction?
Well, take it from my context, from where I'm coming from. I believe a few certain things. One is, I believe that just like the sun will rise, I believe we're going to run out of oil. Okay? I believe that only a certain amount of people, unless we find a silver bullet or figure out a way to do things in a very sustainable way, that many less people can live on this earth. I just believe we've overtaxed the earth. I heard the figure the other day, we're at about 150% of capacity. So that means every time I consume something, Now, someone else in the world does not consume something because I am consuming, we don't have enough for everybody. So if I use too much for me, then someone else isn't going to have it. So I become very aware of that. I try to become very aware of that. And so, I'm sorry, I've lost the question.
You think awareness is a good step in the right
All right.
direction?
So I believe that you should be aware of what your actions are, and I think everything you do is what your actions are. I think if you drink a glass of water, if you fill up your car, if you fly off to Tahiti for a month, if you have a house in the mountains that you keep heated all winter but never use, those are all actions that you're doing, and you need to be aware of what that means within the global context of reduce the amount of oil, resources that we don't have enough of. And so I think people in other nations, and I think if you go to certain areas of Africa, they're very aware of everything they use, of everything they have very little. And we have been brought up in a society that says you can have anything you want, and that's the virtue, is that the more you have, the better. And my reaction to that is we've got to break that chain. We've got to say that sustainability and living within our means, as far as resources is concerned, is a virtue. And so you're not doing anything wrong by not being green. You're living the typical American life. But wouldn't it be great if you could live in a world where and know that you're going through the world in a way that is sustainable and that does not take something away from someone else on the other side of the globe, and you'll be ready for that moment when oil and all of these resources become scarce. More ready.
Yeah.
We're never going to be ready.
Yeah. So moving on from that, then, can you give me a general background of Parei?
Sure.
History, purpose, that kind of thing?
Back in around 2001 or so, I was reading books by Richard Heinberg, Colin Campbell, and a few other scientists and social scientists that were talking about the potential threat of peak oil. And peak oil is that time when we can extract and distribute from the earth less oil than the day before, in a sense. We start going down a bell curve on the other side. And what struck me was that there was absolutely no planning happening. I said to myself, well, I got to get my family ready for this. I need to get solar on my roof. I need to get a house that's sustainable. I need to be able to grow my own food. There's a whole bunch of things I need to do to get ready for this. What happened was I realized, well, I've got a bunch of friends, and I got a bunch of colleagues and people I work with and people I know, and my family, extended family, and I said, well, if they're not doing well with this, then how can I be doing well? If they're not gonna be able to, if they're gonna be starving and unable to move and unable to do this, so I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Let me help my friends. Let me help. Let's all discuss this and let's all work together to get ready for that. And once we're together, once we're good, our families are good, we can stop. We'll be good. Okay. And then I realized, wow, what if my town dies? What if the school can't operate? What if Plymouth State right here can't be here? What if no. Okay. We got to get our town together. We got to get our town ready for this. But just our town. That'll be fine. We'll be good. Once we get. But what if Plymouth has it and Laconia doesn't? Well, that's how wars start. I mean, that's how anger begins. That's how animosity starts. And so we realized that we needed to create a local community organization that could get people ready for this. Individuals, person upon person. Every gallon, with the idea that every gallon of oil that we save, every ounce of oil we save is a positive thing. Okay? And we were very interested in the net energy. So, for instance, the idea of you have a good car, let's say an okay car, and you're going to go, that gets 40, let's say 20 miles to the gallon. You're going to go trade that in and get a Prius that gets 50 miles to the gallon. But it costs about, in energy, about 9,000 gallons of oil to make that Prius. So you just spent 9,000 gallons of oil to get something that you'll never pay back in the extra. So realistically, in the end, it was better to just keep that car going till its very end. So things like that, where we're going to put in solar, but it has to have a really good positive return of an energy investment. And so we went forward looking at all this stuff, wanting not to ever use another gallon of oil if we didn't have to. Of course we do. But we would have loved to have just never ever again used a gallon of oil. So everything has been based on that. So what we did is we started with information. We started to get people that put in solar, and we would get people together to do site visits for them. They'd come up from southern New Hampshire and see if the solar could work on their roof. And we found that organizations from southern New Hampshire, these businesses that put in solar, wouldn't call us back. You know, we were up here and no one wanted to talk to us. We weren't able to get them enough profit. And so we finally came around to the realization that we had to do it ourselves. We had to, if anything we were going to do, we weren't going to wait for the government. We weren't going to wait for people to say that they were going to make enough money on us, whatever. We just had to do this. We had to get it going. And so we started a thing called an energy raiser. And what that is if I come to your house on a Saturday and help you put up solar on a Saturday, you're going to come to my house 2 Saturdays after, or a year after, or whenever you're on the schedule, and you can help me put in solar. And what that did was a couple things. One, it did is it brought solar into parity with current ways of getting energy. For instance, you can heat water with oil or propane or electricity. Well, that has a cost to it, and the cost is relatively low compared to putting in a typical solar system. But if you could get rid of the labor costs, all of a sudden, and you amortize the system over 20 years of the life of the system, all of a sudden, this cost of the solar was substantially less than you could buy it today in oil. So we didn't need incentives. We didn't need the government saying, you'll do it only for this. We basically went and did it, and people were putting in systems that were saving them money immediately. So since then, since we started in 2003-04, we've put in close to 200 systems. Of them, about 65 or so have been energy raisers. The rest have all been organic, professional, and do-it-yourselfer things where people learned at the energy raisers. And the plumbers and electricians came and got references and gave out their cards and stuff. And that's why we've had so many professional installs. So it's really sort of we didn't come up with this. We fell on this. This was an interesting idea that we saw enough to continue with. So we're not geniuses. We just were genius to see that it was working and to continue with it. But by people coming together and helping each other out, and by the tradespeople coming and seeing the potential of this, we now, again, 200 systems. We're talking about 100,000 gallons a year that's not being used, and that's at $4 a gallon. That's $400,000 a year that no longer leaves the area and goes to Texas and then Saudi Arabia and other places.
Incredible. So you talked about like the energy raiser, like the people helping out. Was there any techniques in the process of gaining or putting up or using that's more sustainable too, like in the process of?
Well, what we found, there were certain criteria that we needed for the energy raiser, and one was sort of a Southwest Airlines system, where most systems will be the same. We needed to find out what the system would be, and then we can repeat it over and over and over again, because these are going to be volunteers, and we need to know how it's going to be done, and we want people to come and know what to do. So we did that. We got one system called Apricus that everyone got to know, and now we have extra tubes, we have all the extra parts here, so that if anything breaks down, we have it here right away. So we didn't want to do a whole bunch of different systems. The other thing, it needed to be something that was safe for people to do, light. So we didn't have to have a crane put this thing on the roof, or having 20 people on a ladder carrying a 200-pound thing. All the components of this are 10 pounds or less. So they went up individually, and it had to be understandable. Everyone had to sort of agree that this is a good way to go for New England, a good system. So with that in mind, we did not do, and we never really have done for Energy Razor's PV, a photovoltaic for electricity. Photovoltaic is dangerous. I mean, if you don't do it right, you can get shocked. We felt that wasn't something that fit that mold. So most of our systems have been to heat domestic water. We have found, it's been a real interesting discovery of, from experimentation comes, perfection is the wrong word, but from experimentation comes a model that works down the line. And people have experimented in different things with this through the years, and it hasn't gone well at times. And we've changed it and rerouted things and redone things. And our comment has always been, on behalf of Parei, thank you for experimenting. And we appreciate everything you've done in the experimentation. Now, they may not have wanted to experiment, but they agreed to, and they did. And in the end, the result was the same, but we were able to learn from that. And one of the things that, imagine this, that when you imagine this world of less energy and calling up a plumber, and now he has less energy to get to you, and there's less propane for his bottle and everything else to do his craft. That's a world that I'm envisioning. And so a very, very big thing that we wanted to see happen was skill sets. We wanted people to build their skill sets in being able to do this for themselves, and be able to manage their own projects, and being able to troubleshoot their own projects. And it's worked out extremely well. People, by the time they go through this process of helping other people, seeing how it's done, they pretty much take control of their project, and if anything goes wrong with it, we'll get a phone call for questions, or they'll go to another mentor sort of person that we've set up, but realistically they take care of it, and for the most part. So with 200 systems in place, we have people understanding. Even if we put in a professional install, we would like the homeowner there that day, so that they know where everything's going, and they understand it just like they would an entertainment system that they put in, or their boiler or something else. You don't throw away the boiler if it stops working. You call somebody, or you fix it. And what was happening with solar systems that were put in the 70s, people were just throwing them out because they didn't understand them, and we want everyone to understand them. So all of these sort of models we found in the Energy Razor process, sort of how to do it, skill sets building, all that type of stuff. So these were all things that were expounded upon within the process.
So practice makes perfect.
Practice makes perfect, yeah. Not always, but yeah.
Or better, at least.
Yeah, you're right.
So with the 200 projects, can you tell us about some of the ones, maybe locally too?
Right. Well, there's a couple different levels of projects. There's been a lot of homeowners doing these things, so they're all very typical, which is usually an Apricus 30 system. That's 30 tubes that send the heat up to a manifold that gets stripped out of there and then brought down into a tank in the basement. And so that's the typical thing. But as we've been growing, we've been finding that the community wants us to do more community-oriented things. And one of them, which is typical Parei, is there was in the park down by the river, I think it's called Riverside Park, maybe down behind, down by the river. So it's Riverside Park, down by the senior center. They were putting up a pavilion, an entryway to this, and they wanted to put solar on it, and the organizers of this. And they said, look, we'd love to put solar on this thing, but also we're doing this energy fair in the park, and we want to pull everybody in and show all the new technologies and things like that. And we want you to come, and we want you to display stuff. And we said, we'll come, but what we want to do is on that day we want to put in solar. We want to put the solar up, so everyone coming by can help put the solar up. And so what we did is we raised money to do this, and we put in enough solar PV, electrical, to basically give electricity off into the grid all year round, so they have enough energy for the whole year for everything they do down there. And so during the day, as well as displaying what we do, people came by and dug the ditch for the conduit and helped the electrician hand things up and did these things so they could be involved in actually putting some solar in. And that's your typical Parei model. We don't want to do anything unless it's actually moving energy conservation and production forward. And so we've also been involved with municipal projects, like there's a new system on the Pease Public Library, on the elementary school. But one of the most intense projects we've done, which has been a combination of weatherization and looking at the building and renewable energy, is the water and sewer building up near
Old North Main.
Old North Main Street, right. I can't think of where it's near. It's just as you're leaving town towards
I was
the
just
north.
there the other day,
Yeah,
so.
And that was the attempt to see how far we could go to make the building net zero. And net zero is another term that's thrown around all over the place. I've heard it referred to as the ice arena at Plymouth is net zero. That's far from the truth. Basically, net zero means that you're not, you don't have any outside, you don't need any outside sources of electricity or energy to run the building, or you have a surplus that takes care of other energy needs, and so energy in, energy out is the same. And so most buildings are, they might be able to get to 50% net energy or a little bit better. We were really seeing how far we could go. So by the time we really analyzed this and worked with all the parties in place, we were able to weatherize the building to such a degree and put enough renewable energy on its roof that we're believing is coming very, very close to net energy. And the sign on the side of the building says no energy. This building requires no energy from outside sources, and that's the goal. We didn't think we could get as far as we did, and with a few tweaks, with a few more things we did, it didn't take much more to get the building to be more efficient. But the other thing that happens here, that you have to understand in a project like this, is the players have to be engaged with it. The players meaning the people who are going to use the building, the lifestyle within the building. Are they going to help this by turning off computers or turning off lights and getting engaged? And in this case, it was unbelievable. Everyone got very engaged with it. But it's sometimes a little more difficult with a huge corporation or the college or whatever. If you have some people engaged and other people not, you're going to do these measures, but if they really get engaged, that's what really takes it to net zero. When it becomes a contest, it becomes a challenge to walk into that building every day and realize we're not using any more. No energy is flowing into this building at all.
And sometimes it's flowing out.
Sometimes it's flowing out, right?
And actually, I think the ice arena is 30% self-sustainable.
Right, and the
Which isn't even close to 100%.
well, and the thing about the ice arena is, don't ever show this to President Steen, but is that when I met with President Steen, it was they added about 50% to the total energy use of the college with that building. I mean, it's just a staggering amount of energy. And if you're going to put in a little farm stand and say it's going to be 50%, that's one thing. That uses a lot of energy. It's a staggering amount of energy. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're using a little bit less, but it's still a huge building.
So you've touched on this before, and I kind of just want to refresh on it because I think it's kind of been a theme throughout all of our interviews and all of our talks. Is how is the community involved? And can you just talk a little bit more about that? I know you have already, but
right. Well, I mean, when we got going, I think any community taps into a long-standing desire to do this. There's a certain amount of people that have been laying in bed at night and thinking about the possibilities for a long, long time, and all you really need is catalyst. I think you need someone to say, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's go do this. Let's set up a meeting. Let's have some fun, and go make this happen. And I think that's what Parei did. From that, and I'm not saying even from that, but that type of mentality in this community, especially, came. A very vibrant energy committee and organizations like D Acres and places like that Local Foods Plymouth came out of this, that people were really interested in doing something, and so many people could find their niches, could find the place that would answer the questions that they wanted to have answered. I was very interested. I've always been a techie. I've been not a Trekkie, a techie, and I've always been interested in technology and what that can do for us. And I've soldered things together and made things, and sort of a closet engineer. I've really wanted to do those things. That's me. There's also Local Foods Plymouth and other farming type things that I'm interested in, but not as much as this. And if that had come first, I don't know if I would have been as engaged with that as I am with the renewable energy and the sustainability side of the technical side of things. So that's my niche. But with the Energy Committee and D-Acres and with the Local Foods Plymouth and now Transition Towns that's coming on fast, everyone can find their niche of where they want to fit in and where they want to do it. Parei isn't for everybody, but I bet there's somewhere along the line you could be involved with something that would be, yes, that's what I want to do, and they all, as long as they all interconnect and we're all heading in the same direction, fabulous. But it's that I think the local organization, whatever it is, tapping into that desire, that is the most amazing thing. Because from people, it just explodes the possibilities.
Brings the community together too.
It brings the community together, right?
So, I think this is a big one, especially with Parei, maybe. What generally turns people off from seeking alternative energy solutions, and are there any solutions to these turn-offs? 'Cause I know solar stuff can be expensive. I know you talked about the energy ranger saves with labor costs.
Right. There are what I see about a handful of turn-offs from renewable energy. One of them, the simplest one, is change. We've been taught to be consumers and to use energy in a certain way, the same way for 100 years. It's been a very long time. It's a very difficult thing to turn that corner quickly. So that's the first thing. And what I'd love our politicians to do, to say, and it is happening now, but it didn't happen before, and I'm afraid that someday in the future it won't happen again, is to say it's okay. This is all right to do. This is okay it's a virtue to save money, to save energy, to save your natural resources. It's all right if you want to do that. And as opposed to saying, no, we need to consume. So that's one thing. And so that's change. That's a biggie. Cost is another. And we've been able to in a lot of different ways, show that the cost is actually not much more for renewable energy, even done traditionally. It's just how it's paid for. In other words, you may have to go out and borrow money to do it, and that's a scary thing, and I understand that. So that's a big barrier. It's the upfront cost, and there's been a lot of models out there that have been trying to deal with that. PACE, which came along, that was public assessed community energy. That would have just put it onto your tax bill for the amount of years, and it would have gone to the next person. Would have been great. That got killed. But there's a lot of different ideas that are coming up. Companies that will put the solar on your roof, and you take the savings, they take the credits, but over time you're paying for it in the savings. A whole bunch of different things that have been trying to alleviate that. And then again, doing it yourself and doing it with your neighbors, energy raiser type things. Those are all things that bring it within, again, parity of renewable energy. Renewable energy, I gotta say, if you put up a solar system even 10 years ago without any incentives, if with the life of the system, it would probably going to be in parity with the way you could buy it through the electric company. The problem is that people just don't think that far out. They don't think that way. So we've had to try to get people to start thinking that way. The other thing that we've used is a thing called when you go and pre-buy your oil to save money. Yes, you've got to put the $1,000 out right now, and you don't use it for the whole winter, but you get it a little bit less expensive. All we're doing is saying you're pre-buying energy for the next 20 years. And so that's one way to sort of look at it. It's just a difficult thing. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So there are barriers that are out there, mostly price, and just the fact of changing. And I mean, again, look at me. I mean, I'm a guy that still flies off to go to jobs. I use a car. I still buy some imported beers. I still do these things when I know that it's probably not the best thing to do. But I've been taught throughout my whole life to do that, and so I'm slowly but surely trying to change my life.
So at this point, then, what recommendation would you give to people who are kind of trying to be green, want to make a difference, don't know exactly what to do, but know that they're not doing enough right now?
Well, I think there's probably ask a neighbor who knows is probably the best advice I can give. If you want to do more, if you want to get involved, just find out. Knowledge is absolutely power. We're involved with weatherization of homes right now, and we say getting an energy audit costs you $500, but now you'll know. Now you can make good decisions over the next 20 years as to what to do. I think that without knowledge, you don't know whether you're doing the right thing or not. You don't know whether that water bottle is better than that water bottle. So, whether it's better to do. I had a talk with someone recently about recycling, and they said, with all the movement of all the bottles and everything like that, in the end, recycling really doesn't do all that much. And I was angry at first, but then I realized, he could be right. He could be that you have to sort of look at the system, but without that knowledge, I don't know whether it's right or not. So knowledge is everything, I think. And if you want to do more, just the desire to do more is the first good step. Just analyze everything if you can, as to your options available to you. So I have a simple story that I bought a scooter to ride a scooter. It gets 100 miles to the gallon. I can't take anyone in my family with me. So it only works when I can go by myself. So let's buy another scooter for my wife so we can go together. Well, now we're only getting 50 miles to the gallon because we have two scooters. And so maybe we need a car. Okay. Well, I have a car that can take 2 people down the road, 3 people down the road. What if I need to take 15? Well, now I need a van. The problem is so what the issue is the van is not good for one person. The scooter is good for one person. The smaller car is good for. So what are your options available to you? If you absolutely have a big family and you need a Suburban, and you absolutely have to have that, you have to have it. You have to have a bigger car. But if you don't look at your options and determine what's the best option for you. Again, I love riding that scooter that's 100 miles to the gallon, but it's only me. So if I can eliminate a car and ride the scooter, great. But if I have to go get groceries or do a whole bunch of other stuff or carry a whole bunch of stuff, that doesn't work anymore. So it's more about man miles than it is about the size of the car and how you drive. So there's options out there. Find out what your options are and do what you can to use them. What Parei's in the business of doing is trying to create options. We're trying to create new ways of doing it so that there'll be more options so you can go do these things. Buy your food locally, transport yourself differently, heat your home a different way.
So lastly, is there anything else you want to say, add, or be made known?
I think I think we've covered too much probably by now, but I think
40 minutes of stuff.
You're right. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Sorry about that.
No, it's good.
No, it's going to be nasty in the editing.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's okay. I think that everybody probably deep down inside, even if they're a millionaire guy that jet sets around the world, I think we all know what the score is. I think we're busy. I think we got kids. We got soccer games to go to. I think we got all these different things happening. But I think we know what the score is. I think we know what the condition of our Earth is. I think some people deny it because they don't want to think about it. That's fine. I think other people deny it because it's too much to deal with. Whatever. When I first started down this journey, it scared the living daylights out of me. And now that people are talking about it and helping each other, and we have 100,000 gallons of oil that's not being used in this town, in this area, because of it. Wow, that's a lot of oil. You know, and we go another 10 years and now it's 1 million or so gallons of oil that's not being used. This can be done. And so what seems overwhelming is no longer overwhelming. It's actually quite doable when you do it piece by piece. But I think if everyone just taps into that inner desire, we're fine.
Well, thank you.
Stop it now. Stop.